Welcome back to the Breaking Ice podcast. My name is Josh Ferguson, and today I'm sitting down with Jasmine Bailes. And I've known you for like a few years now.
Yeah.
You know, the first time I met you, I was doing some work with Black Spruce, and you brought like 2 caribou legs randomly from the plane.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
I think you had just gotten back from, was it Gana River?
Yeah, back
Nice.
from Ghana.
So what were you doing out there?
I was working out there as a head cook that summer.
Oh, nice.
And so I was just hanging out at the base camp for the summer, making sure that everyone was fed and
How'd you land that job? That seems like a pretty sweet gig, going out there and spending all summer in the mountains.
Yeah, it was, I did a Northern Youth Leadership Camp out there, and my sister had also worked there before.
Okay.
And also my dad, he worked for Northright for quite a long time.
Okay, what did you do for Northright? I don't
was
want to get off topic here, but...
Yeah, he's a pilot.
Okay, sweet.
So he'd be flying the Twin out there, and so he knew Harold, who runs and owns Gana River Outfitters. Mm-hmm. He knew my dad. And my sister did a Northern Youth Leadership Camp out there, and then I did it a couple summers after her. And so got to meet...
Just fell in love with the place?
Yeah, got to meet Harold. And it was actually funny. Since I was the only girl from Norman Wells there, mm-hmm. which was on the flight back, they were like, hey, like, we don't have enough room for everyone. Do you mind staying a night? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then,
this is on the Northern Youth Leadership trip.
This is on the Northern Youth Leadership trip. And so then I stayed out at camp with Harold for a day. And then the next day was like busy. Like, he was getting his guides in, like a lot of his gear and stuff for the summer. And so I was just there, like, helping unload things. And at the end of the day, when I was going to be flying home, he gave me like $100 he was like, thank you for like working so hard today. And it was like, I was like 12.
Yeah,
and I was like, whoa, like this is like some big money here.
I'm rich.
Right? And so, and then I think my sister was working in their kitchen for a couple of years at that point, or a year at that.
How much older is Naoka than you?
She's 3 years older than me.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So she was already spending some of the summers there. And when she wanted to move to a different outfitter, Harold asked me if I wanted to be part of the team. And
That's
so then
awesome.
I did. And I'd spend like every summer out there doing dishes and hanging out at base camp. And doing what
there's
needs
these
to be
things that
done
need to be done. Then,
and cleaning. And then went up to head cook and was kind of running the kitchen there for a year or two.
I cooked all through university. That was like my main like job as like to get me through school and all that kind of stuff, was cooking in restaurants. Mm-hmm. Yeah, super fun. I really love it.
Right? It's so like different cooking out there because you have so like limited resources.
100%.
Yeah, like we'd be planning meals around when we'd get things on the Twin coming in, mm-hmm. and just making do with what we have. But it was also nice because we got to cook with a lot of caribou, moose, Dall sheep.
Yeah, meat was the one thing that you didn't have.
We didn't have a shortage of it. It would always be a special treat whenever we'd get to have like chicken or something.
Totally.
Like
yeah,
that.
It's funny. I since I moved up north, it was like kind of understanding how like food works up here, and mm-hmm. like the one thing that you can source locally that is like so healthy is meat.
Meat,
it's
right?
Like, it's awesome. I went to a summer camp for years, and mm-hmm. like 18 years, and I went there, started as a kid, and I went all the way up until I was like program director. But when I was program director, I would like also be able to cook if we didn't have a cook for some reason. So I know that like kind of remote, you're like, we're making lasagna, but we don't have lasagna noodles. Like that kind of thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty fun. Although we didn't have like oodles of moose and caribou to work with. It was always, not that.
Yeah.
So fun. But that kind of cooking in a remote place, that's almost, it's beautiful because just like your views are gorgeous. I don't know. There's just like right? There's this rhythm to cooking for people throughout the day, but then being in this gorgeous place and having that kind of a setting. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in Norman Wells?
Yep. grew up in Norman Wells, and lived here till I was about 14.
Okay.
Then I went to boarding school, and while I was there, we moved to Edmonton. But I'd always come back during the summer to either work at Gana or now working at Black Spruce.
Awesome.
So,
what was it like growing up in Norman Wells?
It was fun. Like there wasn't like an abundance of like kids your age.
Sure.
So it was like you were very close with like the people that were around your age and that you'd be seeing every day. So, yeah, and I'm still close with a lot of them today. So
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know the community in a completely different way than I know the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, way more profound.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you grew up in DOT, right? Like right next door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the house I grew up in.
That's so cool. I think that's awesome. And what was your guys' pastime, as kids? What was your favorite pastime?
Favorite pastime would be riding bikes somewhere, going to the playgrounds.
Yeah.
Playing some grounders.
Was McKinnon Park always there, or was that established later?
I think it was established a bit later.
So like as a 5-year-old, it wasn't there?
Not that I recall.
Okay.
No.
Cool.
But it was mostly that playground out by the police park.
Oh yeah, okay.
Over in town, so
that's quite the bike ride.
Yeah. it would be quite the bike ride. Or it'd be like asking my mom, can you please drive me into town? So throwing my bike into the back.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think was like some of the, like, how did growing up in a small community shape you in terms of like how you think or what your views are?
I think it, like growing up really close, like you rely on like a lot of the people around you, and it's like my first time going to like the cities and stuff or like living there, it was really overwhelming for me because it's like there's so many people here and I don't know all of them. And I didn't grow up with all of them. But yeah, just like that in any little community that I'm like in, whether it be Norman Wells or like at the boarding school or like a workplace community as well, like I always know like how important that is and how important it is to like stay close and like kind of rely on each other.
Yeah.
And I guess doing well in those situations.
It's funny, like I was born in Toronto, but having been, I spent a lot of time. When we moved to Mexico, we moved from Toronto, which is millions of people, to like about 100,000, and then I hadn't lived in a town with more than 100,000 for like a few years. And then after that, we moved to London, which was like more than that, and it always felt kind of big. But I don't know, I just didn't know how to like exist in a place like that. Like 100,000 was like a comfortable size. And now we moved here, and I'm like, oh, I'm just Euclid.
Yeah, yeah, it's just tiny.
It's so wonderful. I love how small it is, and yeah, there is something to that like community. I like seeing the same people often.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and there's something, I think, grounding about not being anonymous all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what my thought process is there, but I like being recognized.
Yeah.
And having interactions with people that are unexpected. And I don't know, you don't plan on like ending up at so-and-so's house.
Yeah. Right? But that's how it just is sometimes.
Quite the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So how'd you get involved with Black Spruce?
I think the first time I did a trip with them, it was as like an assistant facilitator.
Okay.
It was after my last year of Gana.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what year that was, but I think it was 2022.
Yeah, I think that's when we met.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Is that your flight out? Your last year at Gana? Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
2022.
And I asked Harold if I could go and do this trip because my sister was like, hey, like, I think there'd be a spot for you to come and like help out on one of these Black Spruce trips if you wanted to. And so the trip was going down the Keel rafting, doing that like Keel River rafting hunt. Mm-hmm. And
that's, I think, the coolest program that Black Spruce runs.
Yeah, same. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I totally want to go and do that. Mm-hmm. And so it was really like, it was like amazing because I got to be out there with my sister. And then I also got to know Esker and like, you really get to know someone when you're out on trips with them.
Well, it's that same kind of closed community, like isolated community headspace.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that was like, it was so amazing. And we had Wilbert out there too.
That's cool.
And some participants But yeah, that was the first time I had ever like done anything like that, like being out on the water, doing trips and stuff like that. And I just like, I really loved it.
You hadn't done a remote expedition quite like that before?
No.
Okay.
Not quite like that. Yeah.
Very cool.
So
how did that change your... Because I feel like that establishes a relationship with the land unlike anything else almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like really special having like, you know, one of my first trips like that with my sister and where she was teaching me and like showing me how to do things. And yeah, getting to know Esker and like him also teaching me and, you know, like it was a lot of learning. And I went in there being like, hey, so I don't really know what I'm kind of doing. So like,
well, you have
be
a
patient.
certain amount of baseline experience,
Yeah.
you know, spending time in the bush and whatnot. Like,
Yeah.
you know, as someone who guided for years, we would take kids out from like downtown Toronto who like really had no idea about like anything. Oh yeah. Right?
Yeah. So I guess I was like better going into that a bit, just having like my background.
Seen that many trees before.
Yeah.
Oh, I know that's a crazy thing to say.
That's so true. Yeah.
Like we literally would have kids who were like, I've never seen this many trees.
Wow.
Yeah. Not like all the trips.
Well, it's good that they were out there then.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right?
It's amazing to introduce kids to that kind of like life. And, you know, I remember over like at the airport pickups, you overhear things like, wait, there's no like electricity. Like, how am I going to use my hair straightener? You know, like, and it's like, you're not bringing that. Yeah.
No, it's not coming.
Now, that's not every kid. Those are some extreme examples, but
exactly.
Yeah. I think growing up, you know, in and around the bush gives you such a foundation for those kinds of trips and those kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
However, it's still a really different thing bringing all your food with you for like 2 weeks.
Right.
Know? Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to learn a lot on that trip, just about like doing trips like that, bringing everything with you, and like always packing up camp and moving down, because most of the time it'd be like I was at like a cabin, like whether it's my family's one
Tent
out on
base camp.
Out on Great Bear or at Gana, where we have all of our cabins and stuff there.
There is such a different way of like relating to the land with kind of the heavy equipment versus the light equipment. If you're not moving every day, it's like totes and, you know, axes and chainsaws and gas and like all this kind of stuff, which is awesome and really useful. But, you know, if you're traveling under your own power, you can't carry all that stuff.
Yeah. So it was, that really kind of changed, well, I guess kind of where I went in my life after that.
Sure.
I like really, really loved that trip.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful to like be a part of it. And especially, just we had such good people on the trip where it just made it like so much.
So for anyone's listening who doesn't know what Black Spruce is, maybe they've heard of Black Spruce or whatnot, give me because you work for them now. Yeah. So give me the like pitch, like start it from the beginning. What is Black Spruce?
So Black Spruce Education is nonprofit working in Norman Wells. And so what we do is basically we strive to take Sahtú youth from the 5 communities, Colville, Forked Hope, Norman Wells, Delaney, Toledo, out on trips on the land, like Sahtú trips. So we just want to make sure that we get those kids out onto the land and doing trips in like the respective areas and stuff. And so
why go on?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no,
Sorry.
I was just curious, like, why do you think that's important?
I think like at least from my perspective,
For
like
sure.
It's always like seeing the kids and like seeing how they like just like grow and like become more confident and capable and like in their skills, and like whether it's paddling skills or like making a fire or like, hey Jasmine, like I was finally able to roll up my tent and get it into the tent bag. Like just seeing them grow in like any capacity is like really special. And especially in the Sahtú where there's not a lot of like extracurricular things. I mean, at least that's what it was like when I was growing up, was that there wasn't as many things
still like that.
Yeah. Where there's like not as many like things to do growing up. And so especially during the summertime, so us having those trips where it's like Sahtú people, like me and a lot of my other staff, where we're taking Sahtú kids out onto land in Sahtú.
Land.
Yeah.
That's
So,
pretty sweet. I find that, like, in my experience, you know, going to camp for so long, it's adjacent to what Black Spruce is doing. And I think what is so powerful about it is when you take young people out like that, they are in the transition from being kids to adults.
Yeah.
And those kinds of, like you mentioned the tent, like rolling up your tent, that seems like such a minute thing. Like someone might be like, well, like, who cares if you can roll up a tent? Like specifically, but that's not the point. The point is independence and relying on yourself and capability. So if you can go out in an experience and develop a skill that you didn't have before and see that you were able to do that, that helps you move from child to adult. And it makes you, the thing is, the trips are hard enough that a kid couldn't do what that person did.
Yeah.
Right? And once they realize that, it's like, oh, I'm not a kid anymore. Like, I'm growing up.
Yeah.
And that's what those, like, rolling up the tent or, like, cooking a meal or, like, doing something that benefits the group shows that person.
Yeah.
And it helps them grow up. It's a really remarkable thing. And I don't necessarily think that, like, how do I put this? Like, the outdoor skills like that, in specific to expeditions, are, like, the most profound life skills because they're kind of very specific to camping. However, the social skills that you learn in those spaces are transferable beyond what you can imagine. And the last thing I'll say about that is, oh my God, I just had it on the tip of my tongue. That the trip is a container. It's like a metaphor for life. It's not like the things you're going to learn on that trip are transferable, like abstractly.
Yeah.
You know, if that does that all make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. Where it's like things that you learn on trip and like taking them back home with you and like having it with it a part of your everyday life.
Well,
like,
I remember just learning that like drinking water was important.
Exactly.
I know that sounds so dumb, but like it's true. Like if you get dehydrated out there, it's a problem. And, like
sorry, that was too real.
It's so real.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, drink your water like 3 liters a day. Come on, like
right.
So we're, like, what trips are you doing this year? How many trips do you guys got going
on? I'm going to be a part of 2 trips with participants, which will be the rabbit skin. So starting off at Turton Lake and then canoeing all the way to Forked Hope. So that's our longer trip. Yeah. And where it's for participants that would be about 16, 17.
And that's primarily, all your trips are primarily canoe trips?
Primarily, yeah.
Okay.
But we do run 2 hiking trips. Okay. And so one of them is like an introductory hiking program. That's out of like Tenstone.
Very cool.
I got to do that one last year and it was awesome. It was just like so nice. Like that's such a beautiful lodge.
It's crazy.
Right?
It's crazy.
And being able to stay there and like do a trip kind of based out of there is like our introductory or intro to hiking, I guess. Because we'd start off with like day hikes.
Well, it's nice to have a space to come back to.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think hiking trips are harder than canoe trips in that you, like with a canoe, you carry all the stuff in the canoe. You know, you can bring more things.
Yeah, you can just shove things in there.
Yeah,
it's
like
fine.
heavy things.
Yeah. But for backpacking, it's like you're carrying everything on your back. Totally. And so... so we're doing Tenstone, and then we're also going to be doing the Shuta mountain hike, so along the Canal Trail.
Okay, so
that one's a bit longer, but they're all like reasonable length, I'd say. Like the Tenstone's about a week,
like
and then
someone who is of the right age and has almost no experience could do it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of what we expect, and it's like. But just like in terms of like skills that they'd be learning and just more so the length is where we have it differentiated by age.
I actually think the length is really important to having a good experience. Because I remember, you know, where I worked, we would have schools call us and say, hey, can you do like a 2-3 day trip? And it's like, we would just say no. Because it's not, it takes 3 days to break someone down to the point where they accept that they're there. I know that's like kind of a hard way of saying it, but like you can kind of grit your teeth through 3 days of anything.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, it's only 3 days. I'm not even going to poop while I'm on this trip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But if it's 12 days, then good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're going to have to live the lifestyle. And I think that's really important because if you 3 days the people who really want to hold out as long as they can, 3 days is kind of the limit before they have to like understand that. I think your body just kind of goes, okay, this is life now.
Yeah. Right.
And then you adapt. And I think that is really powerful as well. And I find that like it takes 3 days to like get into the rhythm of things, but then it takes almost another 3 days to like open up and become more confident in like what you're doing. Well, and open up to the group. Yeah. You know, like you might physically try and like, you know, tough it for 3 days, resist it for 3 days, but then you might emotionally resist it for another 3 days. And then after those 6 days, it's like, oh, I can actually trust these people. Like you kind of get to a place after a certain amount of time and exposure and experiences with people that like they move from like strangers to family really quickly. You know? Yeah. That's what I love, like those parts of the trips when it's like, well, like going off of what you said, that's kind of when people realize like, oh, like we're all out in the middle of the bush together. Yeah. But like, it's like you kind of begin to rely on each other a bit more, or at least the participants kind of do. But yeah, for sure. Well, and the guides too. You and rely on the participants and right. Whatnot. And you see like where their skills are and like what they're comfortable doing. And like some kids are like, I'll be the dishwasher, like I'll wash the dishes after every meal. And then another kid is like, oh, like I want to be a part and like help cook like all the meals. Totally. And so when they get like more comfortable, and then they start like being more comfortable in like camp duties and stuff. And stepping up. And I think that's really important. I think that is part of what builds confidence. Because you always talk about like, oh, building self-confidence. And it's like, a lot of times there's these like buzzwords that you can like say that like sound good, but like people don't necessarily think too deeply about what the meaning is. Yeah. But like really like self-confidence is like truly believing that you have the ability to learn and execute the thing that you're trying to do. You know, and if you don't have self-confidence, you're not going to try new things or step out of your lane. You know, that stay in your lane is like the worst advice I've ever heard. Yeah. It's like, don't grow, you know? Yeah. Don't try to grow as a person. Yeah. That's so cool. So in all this summer, how many trips is Black Spruce sending out? I think we're doing 9. 9 trips? 9. So for July, we're going to be doing the rabbit skin, the Kalo Day, which I did last year, which was really fun. And then the Sahtú big canoe trip for queer youth. And then we're also going to be doing FTP, so Facilitator Training Program, where we take on kids that have either have already been a part of the programs and they're over the age of 18. And they apply back with a resume. They're interested in kind of moving into working. Yeah, and then we train them up for the summer. And then I think it's that next summer where they're full program facilitator. And then in August, we're doing our hiking trips, the 10 Stone, the Shuta Mountain hike, and then the all-boys Sahtú Day, and then the all-girls Sahtú Day. Are the hiking trips in August just because of temperatures? Like, is it a little bit cooler kind of thing? Or I think so. Yeah. Yeah, and like... And then is there a rafting hunt this fall? I think so, yeah. We're planning on it. Really cool. That's so... Okay, nice. So, trips for Sahtú youth. If there's a parent listening right now or a kid, I'd be surprised if a kid was listening. Yeah. But if there's a parent listening and you're like, this sounds good for my kid, like, how much does it cost? How do they sign up? Like, you know, give me the whole... Yeah. Yeah. So it actually, like, it doesn't cost anything for the family or the participant at all. And so what we do is that we they might have to send a little bit of equipment, like clothes and stuff like that. Well, clothes. Yeah. Clothes, toothbrush, anything like that. Sure. And so that's all really that. It's like stuff that they'd already have, you know? And but for other things, it's like we provide tents, barrels, sleeping bags, sleeping mats,
all of our food, all of our snacks.
Specialized equipment for that trip you'll provide, likely.
Yeah, exactly.
And if not, it'll be noted. Yeah.
And we basically provide all the things for the trip. So it's like free for these kids to come up and like sign up. And so even if they're in a different community, because we're getting kids from the Sahtú and also like outside of the Sahtú as well, it's that we'll fly them over into Norman Wells. And then,
So are your programs full? Like, is there space left?
There is a lot of space left. There's a lot of space left.
It is crazy to me that there's space left. Like, I would have been on all those trips as a kid. Like,
I know, right? And like, I think registration has been like just a bit slow this year.
Sure.
But I have noticed it's picking up a bit more now that we're getting a bit closer to it. So it is really exciting getting more participants signing up for our trips and seeing it fill out a bit more.
So like, who are the people who should think of coming? Like, if a parent is listening, like, and like, I have X child, like, why should they come on the trip? And what ages would you recommend? Yeah.
So the youngest age that we take on our trips would be 13. So that would be for either the all girls Sahtú day or the all boys Sahtú day. And then the oldest.
And how long is that trip?
That one's only a week.
Okay.
So I think it's only
pretty
about
accessible. You could probably fit that in the summer.
4 or 5 days of paddling, and then like the week is including when you fly in and when you fly out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're leave on Friday, home on Friday.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, and so oldest, so from 13 to 17. 17 would be the rabbit skin.
Okay.
So that one is a bit longer. Like I was saying before.
What, like 10 days or something like that?
Like 14 days.
14 days?
Yeah.
Okay. Even better.
Yeah. Right?
Honestly.
And, yeah, I mean, really, it's like you just, a youth from the Sahtú Indigenous, or even Indigenous outside of the Sahtú, is who we really want to have and who we have sign up most of the time. But,
awesome.
Yeah.
So how do they find you?
I mean, I guess our website, we have a Facebook and Instagram, both Black Spruce Education, where we post updates on our trips, information about our trips, or...
And the website's blackspruceeducation.com, right?
Yeah, blackspruceeducation.com.
So cool.
And so there's like a different tab where you go onto our programs page, and then all of them are there with like all their information and stuff.
And you can sign up right through the website?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. 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 So it takes like, you go into the programs and then it'll take you to this like program registration right at the bottom. And then you fill out a Google form and then you're in like our system and then we reach out to you to complete the registration process. Yeah. Yeah, it's really simple. Like you just need to find a trip that you're interested in. If you meet the age requirements, if you have that time off, because I know that some people have been talking to me being like, I have summer jobs now, and I'm like, okay, maybe we can, ask for like...
Yeah, I find like, even depends on what your summer job is, obviously, but like I find that if you go to your boss, like we would deal with this with kids too, and be like, look, I want to do this and it's going to be helpful for me to do a better job here in these ways. I'm sure you'll get the time. Like, I find that humans want to support other humans in like growing, especially if you like frame it properly and like give good reasons, and like a week's not that long. And like maybe if you're like the one lifeguard, maybe. Yeah,
maybe that'd be a bit hard, but like.
But if you're like working at like, one of the grocery stores or something like that or whatever.
Yeah.
A week isn't really the worst to go and do something that is kind of once in a lifetime.
Yeah. Where it's like you're out on the land with like other Indigenous youth, with like Indigenous guys primarily, and like you're all doing a trip together and you're all out on the land, and so there's just like so many things that the kids like learn, and like just like seeing them grow, that's like really, really special.
Well, it's a networking tool too.
It's like I want to making sure that like as many kids as possible, if they're available, or like make yourself available, like come join our trips
for sure.
So
I am still in touch with people from my first trips from 2004. Yeah.
That's like that's like the year after I was born.
So the first I was 12 years old and I went on a 10-day canoe trip when I was 12, and I hated it. Well, I was homesick and I was uncomfortable and I was 12 and it was 10 days and it was hard. However, I went home and my dad is like, "You going back next year?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You got to try it at least twice." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And I went back for a 19-day trip the next year and I fell in love. And I went back for the next 16 years straight. And it informed my education choices. I studied at Direct Parks and Tourism. That's actually where I met Esker.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we met in school.
Oh, right on.
And we were in the same program, and I guided through university. And then after university, I specialized my education in leadership. So then I went on to be a program director there, and I was like guiding the guides teaching them and kind of doing all the logistics and all that kind of stuff. And then I did that all the way up until we moved here. And then I started this business, which is totally different.
Yeah, very different.
However, it's not as different as it seems because like we had a huge focus on storytelling at the camp that I worked at. So like there was a lot of metaphor and like we did this really cool thing where we would bring 60 kids in to go on a trip. And the camp, it was a really different scale. Like we were operating in Ontario. We would probably send out, kids from the States, all over the States and all over Canada. So we would maybe send out 50 trips in the summer, but like we had 50 staff. Like it was a huge operation.
Yeah. Really that sounds way bigger than Black Spruce.
Well, yeah, but you guys are operating in a much more remote location and serving a very specific population. It's a totally different thing. Mm-hmm. But, where was I going with this? Oh, the storytelling. So we would take like 60 kids. They'd all show up at once and they'd all like sleep in their cabins based on age. And they wouldn't know what trip they're going on. This is like the weirdest thing. Yeah. So they would sign up to go on a trip and then they wouldn't know what trip they're going on unless you had already been coming because there was like a progression.
Oh, okay.
And the first night we'd like do rules and whatnot and it was just kind of like everyone was together. And then the second night we would tell a story. And the story would be, we had a number of stories that we would use. And it would usually have some kind of like metaphor or like moral to the story. And like for the young kids, we tell the King Arthur story of like pulling the sword out of the stone and how like the reason he was able to is that he didn't want to be king, but he was like a good leader nonetheless. You know what I mean? Like he didn't want it for himself, which was like it's a really powerful metaphor to like in terms of like wielding power, but like knowing that you should behave properly. So like with the little kids, like, a fantasy story is like engaging. Mm-hmm. And at one point in that story, man, it gives me like goosebumps. Because, Arthur, who later becomes King Arthur, is fighting the like bad knight. And, he has obviously like Excalibur, the powerful sword. Mm-hmm. And he, disarms the bad knight and he asks him to yield. He's like yield, like, and the knight goes, "I can't yield to you. You're not a knight." And Arthur goes, "You're right." And he hands him the sword. He goes, "Knight me." And like that, like people are probably like, "What is this guy talking about?" He's like so weird. But there's this like recognition of like authority and trust that he put in that person. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a metaphor for vulnerability. So like when you open yourself up to somebody else and you trust them, mm-hmm. and that really means that you give them the tools to be able to hurt you, then if they are receptive, they won't betray you. Right?
Yeah.
So he knights him and then hands the sword back, and then he becomes one of his knights of the Round Table, which then they rule for, like a good kingdom for a long time. Mm-hmm. Whatever. That was such an abbreviated part of the short of the story.
No, that's fine.
But I think that's a great metaphor because when you're on these trips, you need to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Or whether you like it or not, you'll get to a place where you are vulnerable in some way. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're paddling for longer than you ever paddled, or you're portaging something and you can't lift it the way that you want to lift it and you're embarrassed or whatever, and your trip mate just goes, "Hey, it's okay," and that kind of thing can just like change a kid's life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's what captured me about that work for so long. But wait, we bring all these kids together, we tell them a story, and then we'd send them on a trip.
Oh yeah.
And all the guides would then do group work with those trips, like 6 trips at once, that all related back to that story. So they would do like their own little journeys, but like the theme of that trip related to the theme that all the kids heard. So you'd have a group of 10-year-olds go out, you'd have a group of 13-year-olds go out, a group of 15-year-olds go out, and a group of 17-year-olds. And they would all be doing harder trips with similar, obviously the group work would be like the 10-year-olds. You would be doing conversations with them that were like, you know, if your house burned down, like what 3 things would you take with you? That's a really different kind of vulnerability than like the 16-year-olds where you're like, when's the last time you cried? You know, but all that stuff related back to this first story. So when they all came back at the same time and we all got together, the 18-year-olds and 10-year-olds had something in common that they could talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was magical. The organization's been running for 50 years. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm super captured by that work, and I think Black Spruce is doing great work, and I think kids should go on those trips because it will change your life.
It will.
Yeah, it will. And like in good ways.
Right? Like I want to, give like as many kids in the Sahtú that like these opportunities to like come out onto the land. Because I guess like the way it worked out with Gana, well, I guess I was there on a trip and then was asked to go back.
Sure.
And that's not like something that's, well, I wouldn't say that's available to like everyone in the Sahtú. Is just go work out at the Outfitters.
When that program happens,
but
it's
just like,
it's not their main work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just how things happened. And so, like from growing up in the Sahtú and then learning how to work hard and like how to do things myself and like gain more skills and like so many different things where it was like making bread or like butchering a moose or a caribou. And,
totally normal thing to learn.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I mean, at least like out at the hunting camp.
We never butchered a moose once on all the trips I did.
Okay, that makes sense. But just like so many like different things that I learned out there over the years. And like, again, like it was like a small community out there, like all of the guides and like all of the staff and everything, like we all became really close and they were like my family out there. And I miss them a lot because they taught me just like so much. And like going out from like being there, just helping with dishes and doing what I can to when I was last there, being the head cook, like growing over like and learning so many different things over that time. I think it was about like 5 years.
That's a great confidence journey in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
Like you proved to yourself that you could fit in somewhere, grow in that place, and then be responsible and accountable there.
Yeah.
You know?
And like there's just like so much, like so many good people out there that I got really close with. And I wouldn't have learned everything that I had without them.
So are you feeling that same kind of journey within Black Spruce?
Within Black Spruce, yeah. Like at least amongst like the other program facilitators, I'm feeling that. But where I was initially going, I got a bit sidetracked.
Go for it.
Was that I didn't realize like how good it was for me at the time to be like out in the mountains, like out in the bush, just secluded from the world, I guess.
Totally.
And just like working hard all the time. And during my first couple years, I was like, oh man, like this stinks. Like doing dishes all summer. And then when I'd be away from it and like when I got older, you know, that was like my first year where I was like that. But
you never thought you missed doing this.
Yeah, right. And I was like, oh, like I love going back there. Like I want to learn so much more.
Yeah.
And like at least like growing up, I kind of struggled with like my mental health and whatnot, and like especially like depression.
Okay.
And so like going out there and like waking up and like it was really different from when I'd be at high school, like at the boarding school, versus like when I'd be out at camp. Because at camp it's like, or I guess like when I'm at the school, I'm like, oh, like I'll wake up, check my phone. Oh, this is happening. Oh, like I ran into so-and-so today. And like there's just so many more things going through my mind, and which wasn't great for my mental health.
There's also a lot of other things distracting you.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that versus like going out into the bush and just like waking up being like, I need to wake up and make a fire. It's kind of cold today. Totally. It's like so different. Well, yeah. And like waking up and like just making coffee. Oh, I'm going to make breakfast because I mean, that's my job, but making sure that everyone eats and like has their coffee in the mornings, and, you know, let's make some nice cookies and like bread and stuff for them. And, oh, we just got some caribou in, like, let's deal with that.
I think that what you're saying is that you were relied upon.
Yeah.
Like you had a purpose.
Yeah. I had a purpose and like, and what to do. And it was just like out there. It's like, I didn't use like Wi-Fi or anything as much. And I was just would use my phone for music and stuff. But it's like, I didn't have to worry about like all the little things in my day-to-day life during at the time, which was high school. So there's a lot of things being that age. And
it's a necessary evil.
Yeah. Exactly. And so just like being pulled away from that and being out there, like, again, like looking back on it now that I was older, I was like, that was so like good for me, especially as someone where it's like I've always struggled on and off with like depression. Yeah. And like being out there and having it like just so simple was like so helpful.
A lot of the feedback that we got from our participants was that they would use the trips. Well, obviously they love the trips, but it would serve as a regrounding for the year. So you'd come out to camp or to Black Spruce or wherever, and you'd go on one of these trips, and it like really resets you. You know, it's like, imagine like if you fly across the world and you have jet lag, you know, and then you like take, I don't know, a pill, like a pill,
or something,
and like but it resets your circadian rhythm, and then you're like you feel better.
You're back
again.
On track. Yeah,
that's what I feel like a wilderness trip can do in the summers for youth. Is it can like take you back to the things that are important, because there's so many things vying for our attention these days, from phones to, I don't know, what are you going to do in school, and like all that kind of stuff. And
exactly.
There's a lot that can distract you from just like, it's funny because I find that if you can like get the bottom layer right, that helps the top layers come together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like the bottom layers are like, oh, I'm valuable. I can contribute. Oh, you need something? Let me do that for you. And when you're in town, or, you know, in your day-to-day life, you can still do those things, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't have to.
You don't have to. And I think if you're a contributing member, you should be striving to do those things. And you can like, I'm trying to think, like, for example, like Tim Melnick. He cooks on Fridays.
Oh, yeah.
Every Friday. And that, I think that gives him purpose to a certain extent. And like, he runs the Legion and all that kind of stuff. And when you take on that responsibility, it can be harder for you when you're in town, because it's hard to find your spot. But when you're on a trip, there's a spot for everyone, no matter what.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it can teach you how to fill those roles. So like, it's not impossible to find that meaning outside of a trip. And I think that's where a lot of young people get confused. They're like, the only place I feel good is on a trip, you know? But I think that's just part of growing up. Like, you will figure that out as you get older. However, when you're on the trip, you're the one that does the dishes. You're the one that makes the cookies. You're the one that it's cold. I can solve that. Make a fire. You know what I mean? Like, the furnace doesn't just kick on. Like, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. So it's like, for me at least, like, again, knowing like how there's not like a lot in the Sahtú, just like, I want so many kids to have that opportunity because of how it made me feel, and like how special it was for me, and like guiding these trips, and like it makes it like so much more, like, I love seeing like the growth. Yeah. So,
and it's pretty amazing that it's a privilege to guide them. It's a privilege to go on them, and it's almost infinitely accessible here. Like, it's a miracle that that this thing is available and is free, and more people should take advantage of it, I believe.
I think so too.
Yeah. So, what like next week? What are you doing?
Next week is staff trip.
Staff trip.
Staff trip. So, I'm not sure which route we're doing exactly. I think that doesn't matter. What's the staff trip for? So basically what we're going to be doing is just like staff training and whatnot. Like, all of our guides or all of our facilitators have like been with us before. There's a couple new people that are joining that have experience canoe tripping elsewhere or any trips like that.
It's always, I think, like we always would do this, is we would, largely we would hire internally because, you know, the kids come up through the trip and then they want to work there. So it's like really obvious. But we always found it really valuable to hire someone from a different camp every so often. Just to kind of like, you know, this is like a bad metaphor, but it's like, it's not so incestuous. but like, no, but like, you know what I mean? In terms of the way that you think, like you bring someone who has like new opinions and like, and a new view on things. It's like, oh, all of a sudden it's like, wait, why are we doing it that way? That's so silly. Like,
sorry. That like caught me off guard a bit.
There's
really
no other
funny.
word to describe it.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So staff trip, you have some new people coming on your trip.
Yeah. And like people that did like our FTP program last year, like they're with us like full time now.
So cool.
And it's just gonna be like about the staff getting
that's really
back
important
into
to
the
do
mojo and
in
like
some way, because it puts all the staff in the same mindset for when they go on trip and they do things in a similar way. Yeah.
And so we want to focus on making sure that we plan it out where we have enough time to go over like programming and like skills and or like games to do with the kids, but mostly like programming that we do with them. So it's like, and like after you're done or during, when you're either paddling or hiking, you set aside some time in the day to either be like, hey, like, why don't we do some knot tying or show you how to build a fire? I think for the first couple days, it's like more so safety things.
Yeah.
I mean, that gets done mostly on the first day when we're with them or before we're even out there. Just being like, this is a bear spray. This is how you use it in case something happens.
Yeah, for sure.
These are things to be cautious of.
Like logistics.
Yeah. And going over that, those things, which are important to get done off the bat. But
this is how you use the communication devices.
Exactly. And
we would do that every year. Like even if there had been guys that worked with us for 10 years, we would teach them every year. And that way it's just like,
just a refresher.
Yeah. It's really important.
Yeah. So for programming, at least we do that for right off the bat. And then again, like knot tying, building fires, or
campcraft skills.
Yeah. And
moose butchering, you know.
Yeah. Moose butchering. Yeah. I think that'd only be on the
rafting hut.
On the rafting hut, but that's still pretty awesome.
You know, killing moose right, left, and center on those other trips.
No. No. I mean, it would be awesome, but
for sure. It's just on a hiking trip, you get a whole moose. It's kind of hard to carry around.
Yeah. But and then just going over like skills or just like having like open talks with like the kids and stuff. So programming kind of like goes back and forth between there, I guess, depending on the kind of day. Like if you had like a shorter day where you have more time to do like learning like some technical skills or like having like more programming, then we'll do that. But if it's like a long day where you got winded and for a bit and then you're back out there and you didn't get to set up camp till late, then it'll just be like a discussion during dinner or something like that. Yeah. So it really depends based on the trip and like what's actually happening when you're out there.
Well, there's going to be unknown things that happen all the time.
Right.
But that's kind of why it's an adventure.
Yeah. And so doing like the staff trip, it'll kind of like, I guess, give us more of like timings on like everything, like what it's going to kind of be like day to day and like where we can fit in our programming and whatnot.
We would always think of it in this kind of two realms. Like you would have the inner journey and the outer journey. And the outer journey was like the canoe trip, the hiking trip, starting the fire, collecting firewood, whatever you were doing. And anything skills related with your body, that was the outer journey and your experience with the group. The inner journey was your own experience and like what your like emotional state was throughout the trip and like what, you know, speaking your truth and like all that kind of stuff and like being honest and vulnerable. And that was the inner journey. So like this journey is a shared experience and this journey is a personal experience. Yeah. That if you can bring these together, my goodness, that is a powerful thing.
Right? Yeah. So
because I've been on like, you know, not every trip is perfect. And I've been on trips where those two things are like disparate and they kind of like, they aren't brought together in a nice way. And the magic that can happen doesn't happen on those trips, where if you can merge those two things and help everyone's inner journey have a similar journey, and you help this kid see that this kid is struggling and this kid can reach out and help them out without you doing it, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember having a moment like that on my last year's trip. The group of participants that time, they're very like introverted, I guess. And so it was just like small things, like seeing them like interact more with like even us.
Sure.
But like with each other. And then like, you know, when we went on the plane, everyone was like very quiet to themselves.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it. And that's just like, you know, it's a new thing. Like you're doing like a trip with a bunch of people you don't know.
Totally.
Out on the land. Strangers. Whether it's like there's a good mix of like the kids from the Sahtú that we get, or even outside, just
but
whether they have like
up in Norman Wells and not know the kids from Fork and Hope.
Exactly. Yeah. Where it's like, even if you do go out onto the line frequently, like you might do things a bit differently. And so it's just going on that plane and everyone is just kind of like, you know, really nervous. And intense. And then by the end of it, when we're on the plane coming back, it's like everyone's like talking with each other and like, you know, making each other laugh and just like having that difference and stuff where it's just people, get closer, I guess. Having those journeys like that you mentioned.
Psychological parallel to this is called the hero's journey. So the hero's journey it's like a story that repeats itself forever. Like everyone goes through this when you grow up, and like all the movies that we like know and love are like hero's journeys. And basically there's like certain sections to it. There's leaving the known world, encountering trials and tribulations, overcoming those trials and tribulations, and then celebrating. They're coming back and being recognized. So leaving the known world, you guys have a really awesome physical parallel to that, which is you get on the float plane and you fly over the mountains. Yeah. And that is leaving the known world. You know, I've never been here before. I haven't been on a plane like this. Sahtú kids often have, but but regardless, I haven't been on a trip this long with this many youth before. Like a lot of times if I had to guess, Sahtú youth go on the land with their parents or, you know, family, maybe siblings, but family, but not like 10 other kids. Like that's pretty
exactly uncommon. Yeah.
And then encountering trials and tribulations, you got to learn how to canoe.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to canoe. You got to learn how to camp. You're probably going to get wet. You know, it's going to rain. You might be hungry. Like all these things you're going to have to cook dinner. And I'm sorry, I can't cook dinner for you all the time. Like you're going to have to help me because like I got to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
Right.
And then overcoming those trials and tribulations. Oh, I can cook dinner. I can stay dry. Oh, if I put my sleeping bag in the tent and don't leave it out all day, it won't get rained on.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that kind of stuff. And then coming back and being recognized and seeing that growth, that's what changes your life. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I hope more kids sign up.
Me too.
Yeah.
I hope so too.
And what are your goals for the summer, personally?
Goals for the summer personally would be, well, at least on the trips that I'm a part of.
Sure. Or personal goals. Like, what are you, like, how are you aiming to grow?
I'm hoping to grow as a better program facilitator. I feel like there's always things that I could be learning. And so I think I'll, you know, grow more even after every trip.
Okay, I'm gonna dig a little bit. What do you struggle with? Like as a leader, like what's the hardest part for you?
I guess like
go there, Jasmine. Just go there. Dig deep.
Yeah. It's like I always like worry a lot, and sometimes it's a bit like excessive. Not to like, well, I guess in like all aspects of the trips. Yeah, and that's why we have more than one guide, and like. After, I guess last year was like my first full year, like being a program facilitator. And so like learning to depend on like those around me where it's like, I'm kind of in the mindset where I'm like, I need to do this. Like I need to make sure that this is good, or I need to make sure that this is good. Or where I'm like, oh no, I have fully capable people here with me that are like also very skilled or more skilled than me. I need to be like, like they can take on some of the load, but it's just like,
So are you like you like worry about controlling all the things?
In a sense, kind of. I guess. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Like I could be wrong.
Yeah, and just making sure that like everything's like okay and all right. Yeah. Because it's like, you know, when you have like participants and stuff out there, like I just worry, I'm like, I need to make sure that everything's like good to go and like
yes,
having everything ready, but it's also like
okay, well, I got a thought on that, and maybe it's helpful. There are things that you can't control out there. 100%. The reason that these kinds of trips are valuable is that it's an adventure. Metaphorically, an adventure is uncertain. The outcome is uncertain, and that's why it's cool. So when you're out there, and as the guide, like, I understand you're taking on the responsibility for all the kids, and like, you need to make the right calls, right? And one thing that I always did as a guide that I found really helpful was you really need to identify like what you can control and what you can't control. And if there's things that you can't control, you're going to have to let go, and don't waste your energy worrying about them, because you only have so much energy. And like, I remember, okay, like for example, you're like, oh my God, there's storm clouds coming. It's like, what are we going to do? It's like, all right, well, maybe we shouldn't get on the water right now. Maybe we should put all our things away and set up a tarp. And then after that, make sure everyone's fed and hydrated, drink your water.
Drink your water.
But then after that, you can't control it so much. And you're gonna have to take it as it comes. And like, in those times, the difference between, oh man, this stuff is actually so powerful, because like, okay, let's just use that example. You're on the shore, you don't have your tent set up, you're not set up, and there's storm clouds coming. You have two options. You could panic set up everything. That's one option. People often do that because it seems like an obvious option. It's like, quick, let's do this. And then alternatively, you could set up a tarp, because like, whatever, if the tarp gets rained on, whatever, if your tents get rained on halfway through setup, that kind of sucks. You know? And then maybe you like get things like kind of ready, but you're waiting to see like if the storm is going to hit you or if it's going to pass really quick. And where we were camping, it often like the storms would come and then go. Like, it would just kind of like blow over you. It would rain really hard for like 15 minutes, and then it would probably be nice again. So we would kind of get our ducks in a row, but then the difference between, I find, kids having like a good experience and an incredible experience was the leadership aspect. So like, if you can take that and make that a blast and redirect kids in a way that is empowering but not like stressful for them, that can. So what we would do is like, we'd have a tarp and whatnot, and then the storm clouds were coming, and this is going to sound so silly, but you'll understand, having been on trips. We would go out there with you know, we would take our shirts off or whatever, and it was all boys, and we'd go out there and we'd scream at the thunderclouds. But seriously? Yeah, it was sick, and we'd be like, ah! And like, but then it would be like thunder and rain, and like, not necessarily lightning, but like, it was loud and intense, and you know, with like 10 boys lined up screaming at the thunderclouds, like, there's something that brings people together about those kinds of things. And like, that's a release of energy, and and it sounds so silly, but that design is like, it's a group experience that we all had together that is really different than like the guide being really stressed out about the rain. Do you know what I mean? And that can take a trip from good to great. I think you guys do good work. And I hope more kids sign up, and they should, because I don't really know any other place in the world where you just have a free trip like this. So don't squander that. Take the trip. Go on the trip. Change your life. Grow as much as you can. Have a blast. Get to know some people. And sign up for Black Spruce. Sign up for Black Spruce. Thanks for coming on, Jasmine.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
It was amazing.
It was really fun. Thank you.